Hi, I'm Martin Curtis, and this is Change from the Centre. I want to start this episode with a presumption that Kier Starmer is going to survive the next few weeks. I'm not convinced that's entirely certain, not by a long, long way. I think the fact that there are so many similarities between the failed judgments around Peter Mandelson and the judgments around the Matthew Doyle affair make things really difficult, especially when we've got a very, very difficult by-election for the Labour Party coming up in the next few weeks. But I want to start with that presumption anyway, and just ask the question, what does Keir Starmer do next? And I would argue really strongly that the thing he should do has to be very, very different, but it also has to deal with this broken system that I keep talking about within Change from the Centre, and which politicians are slowly waking up to. And in fact, Keir Starmer's talked about a broken system in the last few days as well. So why not ride off the back of that and do something that has the potential for him to win the public over, because he's dealing with something that they see as a fundamental problem. So why not start looking at our political system and announce a few things that are going to start to deal with the failures within it? Certainly not all of them, not within not within the period we've got in this before the next general election, but at least do some of them. And that's what I want to talk about this week. I want to talk a little bit about 4 steps that Keir Starmer could take, or 4 things that Keir Starmer could do in order to try and deal with the situation that we find ourselves in, and as far as failed politics is concerned. The first one is this one, really, which is to announce a Royal Commission on proportional representation. This is really important in my view. I think that this is a winner, and the evidence is out there that it's a winner. So proportional representation, in the last YouGov poll that was done on this, which I think was middle of last year, certainly the last one I could find, suggests that 49% of people support a move to some sort of proportional representation, with 25% uncertain about whether they would support PR or not. That suggests that if this did come to a referendum, and it would have to come to a referendum if we were to move forward with PR, then it's likely that the PR argument would win. Now let's compare that 49% with the latest opinion polling as far as party support is concerned, where the last one I saw on YouGov, which I checked today, the highest performing party is Reform at 27%, with Conservatives and Labour at 18%. So you look at that 27%, there are 22% more people support a transition to PR than support Reform. So if you're going to bring forward a reduction in support for Reform, maybe one of the things you can do is deal with it by coming forward and dealing with a Royal Commission on PR. To me, a Royal Commission has to be a little bit more than just about PR, though. It has to look at our whole political system. So let's look at reform of the House of Lords. Let's look at what we need to do at a local level, which I believe involves regional government, and I think there's some structures there that would work. But certainly to make it bigger than that. And then you would argue that report in 2030, so a year after the next general election, so that if a referendum happens, it can happen within the next parliament, and so that the general election next, we could vote within a PRC. So that's the first thing that I think he could do. The second one is a little bit more policy specific, but I think is important, and I think you can sit this in the framework of that the Labour Party care about and the things that are important to certainly a lot of the grassroots membership, which is to examine the role of aspiration and expectation in education. Now, you could take the words "in education" off that if you wanted to and simplify it, but that puts this specifically within the remit of one government department, those two words. That's why I sort of included it. And I think this is, and I've talked about this in another video about education. I'll put the link up for that in the description for this video. There'll probably be a couple of other links as well. But what I basically look at with this is I think that in a lot of these areas where there's deprivation, there's also very low expectations and very low aspiration. So what if you can turn around and try and get people so that they're in a position where they leave school with high expectations, with high aspirations, and a real belief that they can contribute to society and make good livings as a result. I have a view that every child should leave secondary education with a ladder to success in front of them and with the belief that they can climb it and an expectation that they will. So how about starting to examine that so we can deal with this issue that we've had the same areas of deprivation basically in this country for the last 30 years, at least 30 years. So I think that's a winner for Keir Starmer, partly because, as I said, I think it fits right into the Labour Party's expectations and the Labour Party's ethos, as well as my ethos as a One Nationist, which I think good One Nationism has aspiration absolutely at its heart. So the next item is a little bit more technical than this, a little bit more easy to implement, but it's about moving the number 10 operation so it's at the heart of Whitehall, so that the number 10 operation is much, much closer to the departments within government. And the reason I think this is important is I just look at the last three governments that we've had, and I think we've had the same issue, which is number 10 is seen as distant and remote. Some of that is about remoteness to MPs, and there's only one way to deal with that, which is the Prime Minister and his PPSs and others getting in there and making sure they're having constant conversations so that number 10 can meld and adjust its policy decisions based on the aspirations of its MPs. But it also means getting closer to other government departments so that they're thinking basically along the same lines when it comes to policy development. And I think the way I would do this is to strengthen the job of the cabinet minister. I would physically move the number 10 operation, but I would also strengthen the role of the cabinet office and the minister responsible for the cabinet office, make his role at a level of the great offices of state. So he carries authority, and have that role as the one that pulls together all of this stuff and gets number 10 so it is close to these departments. Some of this already happens and some of it is already the responsibility of the cabinet office, but it certainly hasn't worked in recent years. And I think this is relatively easy to implement, to be honest. And you know, a new cabinet secretary potentially gives them an opportunity to do this as well. The last one is another one that I've talked about a little while, and I think is something that a lot of the country would get behind if they could do it with enough, basically with enough viv and with enough energy. And that is to create a panel of experts on infrastructure delivery. What I wouldn't do is bring people in from the industry as it is now. I would bring people in that are recently retired and therefore that haven't got skin in the game in this, so that there's not sort of personal advantage for their companies, as an example. And it's just to look at, why is it that we can't deliver projects on time? Why is it that we can't deliver projects on budget? And there probably are examples of where we have delivered things on budget and to time, but there are loads and loads of examples like HS2 where we absolutely haven't and we've completely failed. And once those people have sat for a while and they've developed some meat and some recommendations, I would then implement them through the defense infrastructure growth that we're starting to see. So we move from a position where we are building buildings that in which defense equipment is being built, to a point where we are actually delivering that equipment and sending it out where it needs to go. So moving from creating buildings to building tanks and building munitions. And it's really important because the sooner we can get from the first point where we're looking at infrastructure to the second point where we're actually delivering equipment, the sooner we can start to increase our contribution to what is a very, very dodgy world at the moment. Um, so those are my 4 ideas. I could have picked any one of a number of different ideas. I really could have. Those are the ones that I thought would one is functional and would deal with some of the issues within Westminster at the moment, and the others are either dealing with things that are dear to the Labour Party, or I think dear to the country as a whole, to be honest, and are also well needed. And what it does for Kier Starmer is it starts to create potentially a feeling that he's actually on people's sides at last, and he's on the side of the people at last, and to a certain extent, it starts to show some sort of coherent strategy, which is, to me, the thing he has lacked absolutely most ever since he became prime minister. And will they do it? Something is coming around around our broken political system and the need to fix it. You can start to see the language growing certainly within the hierarchy of the Conservative Party and of the Labour Party. So it's going to happen at some point. So why not now? It makes absolute sense. So I hope you've enjoyed listening. I hope you think what I've say makes some sense. Please, if you do like it, please consider subscribing and liking this video. Both help me, but by subscribing, you'll get my videos in your feed when they're released, and hopefully that will be helpful to you as well. So please consider it, and thank you very, very much for taking your time to watch and listen. Thank you.